Hello, and welcome to session 6 of this video series on learning the Portable Stimulus Standard, or PSS. I'm Tom Fitzpatrick, CEO of Big Fish EDA Consulting, on behalf of the Accellera Systems Initiative and the Portable Stimulus Working Group. In this session on PSS Communication, we're going to talk about how to model data communication between PSS actions, how to model state and state machines, how to manage communication through pools, and then also how to manage system resources. So let's get started. In PSS, a buffer is a specialized struct type to model communication between actions. We can declare a write UART action that outputs a buffer of the defined type, and the TX UART action with an input buffer of the same type. Buffers represent persistent storage in the system and can be written and read by different actions, but the producer must finish before any consumer starts. Buffers enforce a one-to-many relationship between producers and consumers and imply sequential behavior between them. There's no ordering implied between multiple consumers as long as none starts before the producer completes. Streams, on the other hand, model transient data, which means that the data only exists while both producer and consumer are active. Here we've added a stream object output to the TX UART action, and the VIP RX action inputs a stream of the same type. Streams can only have one producer and one consumer, and the two actions must execute in parallel. Flow objects are managed by pools. A pool is a container that provides a collection of objects. Action ports bind to pools, so actions know where to go to get input from and where to put output to. Buffer and stream pools grow as needed, so no pre-allocation is required. And we'll go deeper on pool bindings in the next session. The state objects hold a value at a point in time, kind of like a configuration register. The config UART action outputs the state, and TX UART inputs it. State pools hold only one element, so all actions bound to the state pool will see the same object. Multiple writers and readers are allowed, but to avoid race conditions, only one action can write at a time. The state object gets the new value only when the writing action completes. Reads and writes also can't overlap, so any read will see the last value that was written. And multiple reads can overlap, and each reader will see the same value at any point in the scenario. State objects, as the name implies, can be used to specify a finite state machine. In this case, we have a power state enum that will define our states. We define a state object that uses the power enum field and an action that will define the power state transitions. The initial condition is true until the state object is written for the first time, so our FSM starts in the off state. Constraints define which transitions are legal, so from the off state we can either move to up or stay in off. From up we have to go to the on state, and from on we can either stay in on or move to down. And then down goes back to off. The solver only generates legal transition sequences, so it would take at least 2 traversals of the power transaction to move from off to on. Resources represent limited elements in the execution environment, such as channels, bus interfaces, or hardware resources. To claim exclusive access to a resource, an action can lock a resource, or an action can share a claim to allow other actions concurrent access to the resource. A resource pool has a defined number of elements, depending on how many are actually available in our target system. A locked resource is held for the action's entire duration, so the RLock traversal will claim one or the other of the resources from the pool. Another traversal of RLock can reuse the same resource because the first one gives up its claim when the action completes. Each resource in the pool has a unique instance ID value, so if 2 locks are traversed in parallel, they each get a unique resource, and we can tell which is which. Once all the resources in a pool are locked, no other actions that require a resource from the same pool can be traversed until at least one of the locking actions completes, even if one of the overlapping actions only wants to share the resource. But if any resources are not locked, then any number of sharing actions can be traversed in parallel. If there's only one resource available, then all actions will share the same resource instance. Now let's bring it all together. As we saw in the previous session, activities define the schedule of action traversals to specify the verification intent. Flow objects define the communication between actions, but may also define additional scheduling constraints between action traversals. Buffers enforce sequential handoffs, streams require parallel communication, states manage shared configuration and avoid race conditions, and resources control access to limited hardware. The key is that if the constraints can't be met with the activity as written, the solver needs to infer additional action traversals to satisfy them. So it figures out the right schedule from your data flow declarations to create a legal scenario. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed this session. Please stay tuned for session 7, where we'll talk about components and get into more details about pools. Hope to see you there.